Coffee Hour. Welcome to Coffee with our morning host. We broadcast a host of programs like current topics, newspaper headlines, and music on Radio Sri Lanka. Tune in every weekday from 7 to 8 a.m.
And yes, it's coffee hour, and while sipping your coffee or tea, whatever you prefer in the morning, I'm a caffeine person anyway, so we've got Shenya Sumanawardhane with us.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. And well, Shenya has been around before as well at SLBC, so this is not some new place for her.
I guess so.
So today we'll be talking about IELTS. So when you speak of that, you remember English. Mm-hmm. So to begin with, Shenya, let's talk about the importance of English. And of course, it's a very general question, but let's touch on a layman's point of view, why we need this when we travel abroad.
Yes, so English is considered to be important for several reasons. So as we all know, English is the global language and it links everyone. So if you want to travel, if you want to work somewhere, and if you want to, for entertainment purpose, for everything, for education, for travel, for diplomacy, for trade, for everything, you need English now.
Exactly. So English plays like a massive role when you travel and when you want to connect with the world, as you say. So, I mean, yes, we need to give prominence to our mother tongue as well, but still, nevertheless, you need to connect with the world whatsoever, because the world is just a tap away, isn't it?
Yes, in like a globalized world like today, I guess you can't live without English. It's safe to say that.
Yes, it is. So Shenya, let's talk about IELTS. Now, there are different ways people say this, so I'll stick to the abbreviation of it. So anyways, now there's a lot of prep work before, facing the examinations. Now, there are different forms of it. So, I mean, to do any form, like you need to prepare yourself, you need to learn what you are going to talk about, or, you have to do some impromptu talking. There's a lot going on. So, how does one prepare for IELTS?
Okay, so let me begin with the abbreviation you told. So IELTS stands for the International English Language Testing System. So you can call it IELTS or you can go with IELTS. Right, so when it comes to IELTS, there are two tests that you can take depending on your requirement. It can be academic or general. So you have to choose your most suitable test for you, according to the university or else according to the job that you're going to apply. And this is a test for non-native speakers to test their proficiency to learn and work in English. So in IELTS, you have 4 modules to study and, pass your exam on. So you have reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So basically, they test the 4 basic language skills.
Right. So to prepare for this, let's say you are not someone who speaks English on a regular basis, and you don't use the language on a day-to-day basis as well, but you need to travel abroad and you need to face this exam. How long does it take for one to actually get used to it?
It actually depends on the person's proficiency level. I can't tell you that you can, get ready for IELTS in 1 month or like 3 months or like 1 week. Some people do it like in a week, but for some people it might take ages. It depends on one's proficiency.
Exactly. So it's about how well you know to speak and also to groom yourself, or rather, prepare for the exam. It's not about learning the language, but preparing
it's
for the exam.
It's actually about the strategies of IELTS. So it's very much different from the regular O-levels or A-levels English paper that we are used to. So it's better to understand the strategy and then you'll be good.
Exactly. So that's why you need to, get advice from someone who knows what they're doing on IELTS with regards to IELTS. You're listening to the Coffee Hour on Radio Sri Lanka 731, and today we're taking it light and talking about the importance of IELTS, and we spoke of how English can be helpful when you try to communicate with the world, and at the same time that you need to learn the strategies of IELTS to face the examination, isn't it? So let's also touch on the different types of questions asked in an IELTS examination or test, if you may call it, Shenya.
Right. So as I have mentioned earlier, there are two available tests for IELTS, academic and general. So the question types are going to differ from each of the formats. So let me talk about the academic one, the most common one.
That is when you are trying to go abroad to study.
Studies, yes. Right. So as I mentioned earlier, there are four skills, 4 papers or 4 tests that you have to face for. The first one would be writing. If you take writing, students have to complete 2 tasks within 60 minutes, which means an hour. And in the academic task 1, you have to describe a graph. And in task 2, you have to write an essay. So when it comes to general, you have to write a letter in the academic task 1, and in task 2, you have to write an essay. So if you go for your, let's say, reading, you have 40 questions, you have to finish it within 60 minutes again, and then they will give you a band score depending on that. For speaking, it's going to be divided into 3 parts. The first one would be a personal interview, and then second one would be an impromptu speech. The third one would be kind of a discussion with the examiner. And the last one would be listening. You have 3 sections in that. So you will hear maybe a podcast or an interview or else a lecture. Then you have to listen to it and then answer the given 30 questions based on that. Yes, that's it. You have 4 tests.
4 tests. Okay. So this happens within the same day or in different days?
It depends on, if you choose to face your test on paper, you can have all 3 tests writing, listening and reading on the same day and speaking on another day. And if you choose to have your test on computer, you can have it on the same day. It actually depends on the center and depends on the place that you're applying for.
And does the scoring system or the, most suitable score change from country to country?
It depends on the university. Some universities, they ask for 6 overall band score, and some ask for 6.5, and some accepts you with 6 for one and 6.5 for something and 5 for some other subject. It actually depends on the university. You have to check with that.
Right. So what are the different levels of English proficiency?
Different levels as in, so, we have A1, A2, and those levels would be the same in English as well. But then, as I have mentioned, it actually depends on the speaker, as we are not native speakers. We speak English as a second language. So, yeah, we go with A1, A2, the same. But then here in IELTS, we divide the users based on the band score.
Right. So as someone who is involved in training another, speak about how one can actually, improve the language.
Improve the language in the sense you want me to talk about IELTS specifically or
No, in general.
In general. Okay. Talking about this, right. So to improve a language, I guess you should be consistent. That's the main thing. If you don't use your language, if you don't use what you have learned, you will forget it. I think that has happened to me when I tried learning Tamil and French. I learned Tamil and French for a while and then I forgot because I didn't use it. So my advice to anyone who's trying to practice English is to use it.
Use the language.
Yeah, listen to English, speak English, read and write.
The main thing is to kind of get rid of the fear. Some people get scared, or some people really fear about, being embarrassed. Or
yes, so people have this kind of a self-perceived, proficiency. They think I'm bad at this and they don't use that at all.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because we need to understand that it's just a language.
And it's not our native language.
It's not our native
Yeah.
language, and we need to just practice it for the sole purpose of trying to communicate with another person, and nobody's judging.
Yeah.
But sadly, it does happen.
It does happen because people think that people, perceive English to be a kind of, a strata to check the social status of people. They think if you speak English, you're good, and if you don't, no, you're not good. You're not going to be in the society. So that is there. So you have to, you should try not to be anxious, and then you shouldn't have a self-perceived language proficiency, as I mentioned, and practice.
Exactly, because it's important. We spoke about the importance of knowing the language and why we need to learn, or why we need to face IELTS before moving out of the country. But it doesn't mean that, speaking in another language or your native language, you have to be proud of it, because it's just about, trying to make you comfortable in a different country, isn't it?
So English, we are learning English just for the sole purpose of communicating with others and learn something in some other country.
Exactly, because most of the people, the fear they have, as you mentioned, is about social status.
Yes.
And I guess to know English is an added advantage.
Yes, it is.
That's about it.
Surely it is an added advantage. You can, you get access to everything in the world if you know English. So you get access to all the movies, the entertainment, world trade, tourism, everything.
Everything, exactly. And also I think there are a lot of things happening in the background about how we could accommodate every language into a system and make things comfortable for everyone. Now with Google Translate and all that, things are easy, but it's nothing like, speaking to a person and knowing the language. So it's literally about it. So if one wants to travel abroad, it's important to learn the language. And also if you're going for academic purposes, it doesn't make sense to not know the language, isn't it?
Yes.
Because you're going to study.
Yes, so it basically works as a link between others and between other cultures, between other subjects and all.
Yes, and I remember watching a lot of promotional campaigns and also informational videos with regards to IELTS speaking.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about what you need to know in terms of connecting words and in terms of, speaking the language. So how long does this test last?
The test go for like 11 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
Right. So the first part, as I mentioned, is going to be an interview. So
we're good.
Yeah, we are good. I guess.
We passed 11 to 15 minutes, I guess.
Right. So the interviewer is going to ask you some basic questions, maybe about your name and where you come from. And if you say that you come from Kandy, they might ask you about the Perahara, the Temple of the Tooth Relics. It's basically like the small talk in the interview part. And then you go for the impromptu speech topic. So they might give you some amazing topics. So one of my students, they got the topic, they wanted a student to speak about how to make a chicken curry. And so that boy was devastated. So he was like, I couldn't do it. But then after like a couple of seconds, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. So those kind of nice topics would be there. And then after that, after the impromptu speech.
Most unexpected topics.
Yes. So another one of my students, they also got... he got to speak about dancing.
Okay.
So this boy, he doesn't like dancing. He's like more into wrestling and sports kind of guy. He got to speak about dancing. So he was complaining all the time, I got to speak about dancing. I don't know how I did it. This and that. So yeah. And then after that, you get to discuss about the topic you have chosen, you have spoken about. And yeah, a discussion, what do you think about it, and the interviewee's feedback as well.
Interesting. But the only thing is, when you get like a topic you're not very keen on,
Yeah.
that's when you...
And you're like very much nervous,
You're very nervous
Yeah.
then. So what we need to understand is, I guess, this is about trying to tell another person how you feel
Yes.
and your point of view to another person. So it's all about checking whether you can do it.
Yeah, and communicating and being comfortable.
Exactly. So as long as the topic's comfortable,
Yeah.
we're comfortable, but otherwise it's not. But
Yes.
it's an exam, so you can never be comfortable.
Comfortable, true.
But let's also talk about, as a person who's training, let's talk about how you could get into training, and let's talk about what you went through.
Yeah, to get into training, once you're done with your bachelor's and your basics, you can try. So I'll tell you what I have done.
Okay.
So I have
That's the easiest.
Yes, that's the easiest one. So I have taken this training course, which is available in London Teacher Training College. So that's going to be 3 to 6 months course. So they take you for intrusive training. So they teach us how to teach and how to mark. So they give us students and they let us mark them. They let us give them feedback, and then they assess us. So that's how it went for me.
Right. So it's quite a process, although it's
Yeah.
a few months, but
Yeah.
extensive training.
Yes, extensive.
Interesting. So, tell us a bit about some interesting incidents you faced with students apart from the topics. People say it's very difficult these days to teach.
Teach, yes, because
Teachers say, not people.
because students come from different backgrounds, and
Uh-huh.
also most of them are teenagers. So yeah, I guess that's the most challenging thing when it comes to teaching nowadays. So, and also the students are not like we were like a couple
Back
of
in
years
the
ago.
days.
Yes, so they are very vocal about what they need, and they're very vocal about what they need from the teachers. So now when we were kids, we were like, no, we are going to learn what the teacher is going to teach us. That's it, we go home. But now the students are not like that. If we are, if we get something wrong, they pinpoint you. They're like, you're wrong in this. You have to be, you should check this out and tell us again. So, yeah.
It's quite a challenge.
Yes, it is. But then it's nice, to improve yourself, because this is not our native language, as I always say. So we also make mistakes. Everyone would. So
We're
it's-
humans,
it's-
after all.
Yes. So it's nice to be, to learn something even from your students. It's nice. So
What they need to, and we need to understand, is that teaching is about, letting them know as to what they should do in terms of improving themselves and the
Yes.
strategies. So, people make mistakes, and we need
Yes.
to accept that,
yeah,
because
so the most, the nicest thing about my teaching journey is learning from the students. So normally we don't let ourselves to learn from anyone else. But then you should be humble enough, if you are a teacher, if you are anyone, you should learn from anyone who's available to you, from anything and from anyone.
exactly, I think that's a life lesson. We need to actually focus on being humble
Yes.
and drop that ego.
Oh, obviously, yes.
that actually doesn't help you in any way, because
Yes.
at the end of the day, you learn the opportunity of learning something new.
New, yes. So we are not like know-it-all people. No one does, no one knows that. So you should learn, you should be humble and learn from anyone.
Exactly. And I think nowadays technology also plays a major role. And I guess some would say teaching has become easier. Some would say teaching has become difficult. So in which category do you kind of fall into?
In my point of view, technology is there to help us, not to put you down or not to, drag you down to some lower level. It is to keep you up, to elevate you. So if you talk about ChatGPT, for an example, so now, there's this talk in the town that ChatGPT is going to replace language teachers.
No, I don't think so.
That happens, you don't need English teachers. Now we have ChatGPT. They would write letters for us. They would write this thing for us. It's like, okay. But then would that have the human sense, the sensitivity that we have towards y'all? It won't. It's technology. It's like a machine after all.
And machines make mistakes too.
Exactly. And to feed that machine, you need a human, because
Exactly.
ChatGPT won't learn on itself. You have to teach
Exactly. Now, speaking of ChatGPT, I've had many experiences. I mean, it's easy, it's
Yeah.
convenient, it's easy to compose a lot of
Yes.
things. But still, Shenya, you need to know your language to
Exactly.
see whether that's composed well. Because ChatGPT
Yeah.
makes errors too.
It does.
It does.
really does.
It
you know.
does.
Yeah.
It does, and I've really experienced it. I mean, like, it could change your whole story
Yes.
to a completely different point of view, and that's ChatGPT's point of view, not yours.
Yes.
So you gotta know the language to actually
because-
communicate with ChatGPT.
Exactly. Because it can't think. It
can't
doesn't
think.
have the sensitivity of a teacher. It's just a machine. When you command it to do something, it would, but then it's not responsible, as you said, to be, 100% correct.
Exactly. It can help you.
Yeah,
It can help you. So obviously, you seem to be in that category where you feel that technology is just a helping hand.
Yes. It's not everything.
It's not everything. So teaching game is still on, and it needs it needs to, I mean, I've spoken to many lecturers and teachers, and they say that it's always good to have interactive sessions
Yes.
with the students, and they also say that it would be great if the curriculum can be converted into a way where we could actually put practical use into whatever is taught. So I guess when it comes to IELTS, that's there.
Yeah.
It's about practicality. It's about using the language in the form you're supposed to use. So likewise, I think maths too. Now, recently we had a conversation with a maths master, and he has actually found a way where you could unmath maths. He calls it unmath because it's a language, and he says maths is a language, and it isn't like something which you need to like study. So you can you can practice everything, and you can actually figure out the real use of maths in real life.
Yeah.
Because most of the time what we think is, do we really need it? Like, I mean, we have a calculator.
Yes.
Exactly. So I was also under the same impression until I spoke to him. So there are many things, I think, in terms of teaching that you need, and the teacher also comes up with new methods to teach, which is interesting. And I can never have that patience. So hats off to you for having a lot of patience to handle the Gen Z, I'd say.
Gen Z, yes.
But I guess it's a learning curve for everybody, and since they are born with technology and they are more savvy than us, so what happens is they tend to teach you things and you tend to learn things. So I think it's a give and take.
Yeah, I'm totally okay with that. As I told you before, I'm totally okay to learn anything new. It doesn't matter from whom it comes.
Exactly.
Even if from a student.
Even a kid.
Yeah, I don't mind. If it's something new for me, I would learn it. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
Exactly.
I'm open for it.
So this conversation has been very interesting, and also at the same time, it's to let people know that English is important. At the same time, it doesn't measure your social standards, but it's about communication with the world, with the globe.
It's just a link.
It's just the link, yeah. It's just that connection, so that you know what you're telling them. Yes. And in terms of, even to promote yourself, you need the language. Yes. So there you go. It's a win-win situation, I'd say. Yeah. So Shenya, thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to talk to you.
Yes, it's nice to talk. It was nice talking to you too, and have yourself an amazing day. I think you have a lot going on today.
Yes.
So enjoy the rest of the day,
You too.
Let's move on to some music there.
The Coffee Hour. Welcome to Coffee with our morning host. We broadcast a host of programs like current topics, newspaper headlines, and music on Radio Sri Lanka. Tune in every weekday from 7 to 8 a.m.